Howdy folks, and welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory, and today is Friday, June the 23rd, 2017, and I have the great honor and very distinct pleasure of welcoming back to the show a gentleman who has developed two different billion-dollar companies with the prospects for a third already in the making. And currently, this third company is making some fairly big moves in the mining sector. He is the president and CEO of First Majestic Silver Corporation, and you can find them listed on the New York Stock Exchange under the symbol AG. Find them listed on the Toronto's Venture Exchange under the symbol FR, and on the Frankfurt Exchange under the symbol FMV. He is also the chairman of First Mining Finance, which is a mineral bank, and you can find them listed on the Toronto's Venture Exchange under the symbol FF, and on the OTC market under the symbol FFGMF. Keith, welcome back to the Daily Coin.
Well, my pleasure, Rory, to speak to you once again.
Well, I'm glad that you're here, and I know you travel quite a bit, and we've got in between flights, I guess. So the GDXJ Rebalancing, which was launched somewhere around mid-April, and it's kind of come, kind of gone. We're not exactly sure what's happening with that, and there still seems to be a question about it, and it's made investors question what's actually happening. And first, is the rebalancing over, as there seems to be some question regarding its finality, and second, it doesn't seem to have done much damage to the overall health of the junior mining stocks. I mean, the GDXJ is up more than 15%, while the S&P is up only about 7.7%, or half as much. I mean, what's your take on what's happened and what could potentially happen through year's end?
Well, if you go back and look at First Mining Finance, the stock was about $1. When the rebalancing was announced, and the stock has been under pressure, for the last 2 months, and then the GDXJ has been selling stock almost on a daily basis, trying to, get out of the position, and then they had, of course, stock left over, because they were reducing their holding from 15% of it, or actually 16% of the company, to about 7 or 8%, and that's a big share position that they had to unload over that period of time. So it was putting a lot of pressure on the stock, and of course, retail investors were getting concerned and quite confused. And then, as over time, there was a lot of news and a lot of talk about exactly what was going on in the space. And you've got one fund, like the GDXJ in this case, that went from a value of 1.5 billion. To 5 billion over a period of a year, and that was a very large amount of money flowing into the junior mining space, and the junior mining space is quite small. And when you're talking about $3.5 billion flowing into the industry over a period of 12 months, that created enormous distortions, and they are the GDXJ just got too big. It was its own success. It just got too successful in a way. So they had to change the valuations of the companies that they're willing to put into the index, and they had a maximum value, I think, of about $2 billion, if I'm correct on that, and that limited them to buy certain companies like First Majestic Silver, for example, and many other larger mining companies. So when they upped the value of that, I think it's at 5 billion. Someone told me now, so it gives them a much broader scope of companies they can add to their index. So quite interestingly enough, First Majestic Silver got added to their index on Friday, while First Mining Finance was reduced. It didn't get eliminated; it was reduced from, as I said earlier, 16% to around 8%. And now it's done. So it's behind us. So all the trades took place on Friday. Thank goodness it's over, because it has been quite disruptive. And now we can get back to talking about the stuff we like to talk about, is our projects that we have and the drilling that's going on. And hopefully the GDXJ doesn't come back into the mainstream again. Hopefully it's behind us and never will return.
Hopefully so. I mean, every time that the government steps in and tries to do anything, or these so-called regulators, it just disrupts everything. It disrupts our lives. It disrupts our economy. Disrupts whatever we happen to be working on. I mean, and man, I really hope that it's over. You had mentioned a couple of times First Mining Finance, and we're going to come back to that here in just a minute, Keith. But
Sure.
I wanted to get your take on the physical market and silver and gold. While they're still in the green for the year, they've suffered some pretty big hits, and it's down. They're both down today, and they've left us with an opportunity to acquire more product at more favorable price point for both metals. I mean, what is it going to take to get Americans interested? As it seems, even the long-term holders of metals have slowed their acquisitions. I mean, what's it going to take to get people back into the physical market?
Look, it's all sentiment, right? And I like to buy things cheap, so I'm a little bit different than most investors, I think, because I think investors get caught up in buying things when they're moving higher and not buying things when they're moving down or not going anywhere. And right now the silver prices are at stupidly low levels as far as I'm concerned. And I went and bought my first ever monster box of silver maple leafs, which is your listeners might not know what a monster box is, but it's a big huge box of silver coins. These ones are maple leafs, Canadian government silver coins, and there's 500 of these things in this big huge box. I went down to the dealer here in Vancouver a month ago when silver was around 1650 before it rallied. So my timing was impeccable, but I was walking down the street with this box of silver and bringing it to the office, and I was wondering, like, geez, I wonder if people around me know what I'm carrying, because it was so bloody heavy, but it's also worth a lot of money too, right? So
yeah,
anyways, that was kind of funny, and so now I've got my first ever monster box, which I'm very happy to pay their stupid price I paid for it. And I'm going to buy some gold this week. So I was away last week in traveling, and I'd already committed, because I usually buy the metals in June, because June tends to be a low month for the metals. Particularly, I don't know whatever reason it is, but the June option expiry it's one of the bigger option expiries, and I think it has, quite often a negative effect on the metal price. If you go back 30 years and look at a historic chart of how gold and silver trades throughout a 12-month period, it's very common to see June as the bottom price for that 12-month period. So I just made it a habit of mine over the last decade for buying metals in June. And so, anyways, now gold was 1270 basically, or it almost got up to 1300 just a couple of weeks ago, and I was perfectly willing to pay $1,300 for my gold. But now that gold's below 1250, I'm going to be a happy buyer in the next couple of days once I get out of my office and walk down to the dealer to buy my regular supply of gold. And but you're asking, what's going to influence the price? This reminds me very much like 2001. We had the stock market rally like crazy from 1998 to 2000, and the Y2K, and maybe many of your listeners that are today probably don't even know what Y2K was, but Y2K back then was a big concern, and it drove the Nasdaq from 2,500 to over 5,000, and then it cracked. And when it cracked, silver was $5 an ounce, gold was $250 an ounce, and then all of a sudden the metals started to move. And from 2002 to 2012, we all know what happened. And silver went up 10 times, and gold went up 8 times, and I think we're right in the beginning of a brand new cycle. And you never know when, of course, the Nasdaq's going to crack, or you never know, when things change. But But when they do change, it's going to change very dramatically. And we're going to see, I think, a repeat of what we saw from 2002 to 2012. And whether it starts, yesterday or tomorrow, I don't really care. I just know that we're in the early stages of a new bull market. And this is the time that people should be looking at taking positions, whether it's physical gold or silver or whether it's mining stocks. If it's mining stocks, obviously be aware that they're extremely volatile, and you got to do your due diligence and follow good management teams and and so on and so forth. So don't just go by anything that someone tells you to buy. Obviously, do your own due diligence and take it seriously, because it is a very high risk place to be investing in. But also at the same time, if you catch it, if you catch your investment at the right phase or the right portion of the cycle, as I think we're in currently, just at the beginning of the next cycle, you can do very, very well.
I would agree. I think that we are in the beginning stages of the next cycle, and our economy. You had given those timelines of 2002 to 2012, and if the current economic structure makes it to 2020, in my opinion, it would be nothing short of a miracle. I mean, with the exception of the central banking cabal pulling another rabbit out of their hat like they did with QE. I mean, but also, once again, in my opinion, I think that would expose their failures. And Keith, what do you see happening over the next 3 to 5 years economically? I mean, do you see prosperity? Do you see collapse? Do you see more of the same? What's your more short-term view? Like I said, 3 to 5 years.
Well, this is the longest, or I think it's the second longest on record of economic expansion. And economic expansions, they again, it's cyclical. Economies are cyclical. The mining industry or the gold and silver are cyclical, and often they're counter-cyclical to each other too sometimes. So it's not always that way. Like you can have gold do well in a healthy economy. You can have silver, and quite honestly, silver should be doing a lot better than it's currently doing. Yes. Just because of what we're doing as the human race, we're electrifying the planet, we're going green, we're producing electric cars, we're producing more electronics than we ever have as the human race. We're getting off oil and gas. We're trying to, create energy in a more efficient manner, and all these different things are very good for the supply and demand fundamentals of silver. And we've been in multiple year deficits of silver going back 30 years, and quite shockingly, and I've said this a number of times during my interviews, we're mining 9 to 1. For every 1 ounce of gold, we're mining only 9 ounces of silver. Yet the silver price is 70 times lower than the gold price, which to me makes no sense at all. So I think it's a time to be loading up on silver, physical or whatever way people want to invest in silver. It's obviously up to them, but it's all sentiment, right? And when people decide it's time to start buying gold and silver, that's when it's going to happen, and you don't know what ever is going to be that trigger. It could
Right.
be some political event. It could be the economy cracking, the stock market cracking. It could be a series of many things, and often it's not just one thing. Often it's a series of multiple things that occur that changes psyche. But as long as, in my view, anyways, as long as the Nasdaq continually hits new highs, the mining stocks are going to suffer. Because they are counterintuitive in my view. I wish it wasn't that way, but I think it is, at least in the minds of investors. The mining. Unfortunately, people don't think of mining very much. They, all these electronics and people are using today, and their automobile and all their nice gadgets, their refrigerator and everything that everyone uses on a daily basis, all requires mining. So without mining, the human race wouldn't exist.
It's kind of funny that because you're exactly right. I mean, our world really wouldn't exist without what the resources that we pull out of the ground through mining. I mean, it just wouldn't. It would be a much different place if companies like First Majestic and First Mining Finance, if they weren't in existence, then our world would be a lot different. And especially without silver. If we didn't have silver, our world would be completely different than what it is today.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't be driving to work every day, that's for sure.
No, we wouldn't. And we wouldn't be having this conversation because we wouldn't have the computers that make it possible. I mean, it's just that simple. I want to look at something a little bit different, Keith, and it has to do with something that you had done a couple of years ago. And the COMEX has little actual product in the vaults. And a couple of years ago, you wrote an open letter to the mining industry presidents and CEOs asking them to withhold some of their product from the market to kind of force the hand of the COMEX. And the idea that I have, Keith, is, and you can shoot it down or take it, whatever. What if you went the opposite direction? You speak with very wealthy people around the world every single day. And what if instead of withholding product, you began a campaign of wealthy investors removing product from the COMEX all at one time? What if, say, 100 investors, or whatever it takes, whatever the number, were to place contracts on the COMEX and actually stood for metal? I mean, it wouldn't be seen as someone trying to corner the market because it would be a distributed effort, and it would seem like it would force the hand of the criminals running the COMEX to bring metal to the table. I mean, is this possible, or is this just stuff of fantasy?
Well, there's a couple of comments I have there on that topic, Rory, and one is, first, I was asked this similar question earlier today. I said, buying physical, if investors, buy physical and put it away, there's a limit of the physical supply of silver out there where we've been in multiple deficits, and you're dead on in all the comments you've made. So if we're housing our own silver in our own safe or wherever we decide to keep it, then that takes the supply away from the market, which I think is very healthy for the market. But at the same time, the COMEX is fixed. So
right.
If 100 investors all of a sudden called for delivery of silver from the COMEX would just say goodbye, sorry, and that would be the end of the conversation. Right in their mandate, they're not obligated to deliver you the metal. It's very clear, and people in the industry know the rules. And if you as an investor, had 100 contracts, 100 contracts, I believe, is 500,000 ounces. It would be very difficult for you to get those ounces delivered to you as an individual investor. They would discourage you. They would charge you enormous rates to pull it out of the system. You would be charged huge transportation costs. They would make it very, very difficult for you to pull that amount of silver out of the COMEX. Now, if you're a bank like a JP Morgan or HSBC, Scotia Macata, who needs the silver to sell to Sony or to give to industry for legitimate purposes, they of course allow that flow of metal to occur. You as an individual, I'll go one step further, not as an individual, as an investor, whether you're an individual or a institution, the most contracts that you can own is 1,500 contracts. So, so right off the bat, you're limited to 1,500 contracts, which is 7.5 million ounces, 1,500 times 500. So 7.5 million ounces, I believe that works out to. So that's the maximum long position anyone can have in the silver market. So if you bought 1,500 contracts tomorrow and you called for delivery, they would absolutely tell you to go fly a kite, and they would force you to settle in cash, and they're allowed to do that, and it's written right in their rules.
Yes, and I do understand that. I know that they've got everything kind of sewn up. That's why I was saying instead of one person doing it, there being 100 people doing it, and not taking out, all of these massive amounts of contracts, but something realistic, 1, 2, 3 contracts, whatever the individuals could afford. I mean, it just seems like that would be a way to kind of force their hand. I mean, if you've got 100 or more people that are there for the specific purpose of acquiring metal from this situation where that's what they do, this is what they're supposed to do, and all of a sudden all of these people are not getting their metal, I would think that would look pretty bad on the CME group and the COMEX as a whole and the CFTC. I would just right across the board. And once again, I mean, maybe I'm just living in some kind of fantasy world over here, but because of the rules that they have, but it just seems like that if there was a large contingency of people that were honestly wanting to get, one contract of gold or one contract of silver or one of each, that would have to be addressed publicly. They wouldn't just be able to walk away from it.
Yeah, you would have to have a pretty concerted effort, and you'd have to be almost stealth-like to pull it off. And I think the COMEX would figure it out, and quite honestly, if you're going to buy, one contract, which is 5,000 ounces of silver, it's cheaper for you to walk down to the local bullion dealer and buy that off of them, because you can just walk in and walk out. And then if you try to pull it off the COMEX, they're going to put you through so much paperwork and so much cost to pull it out of their system that it would, your costs per ounce on doing that would probably be so ridiculously high it wouldn't even make sense to do it.
Well, I'm just trying to think of ways to help.
Well, me too. That's why I talk about this all the time, because it's just I'm more we talk about it, then more people are going to know about it, and then eventually, look, I think it's all unwinding anyways. We had this trader that was from Deutsche Bank, who's now been proven to be guilty of manipulating the gold and silver markets.
Right.
CFTC came out with a news release 2 Fridays ago, whereby they've now hired him as a special internal, I guess you'd call him an investigator, to help the CFTC go and uncover other manipulative acts that are going on in the commodities markets. So they've now got a trader as an insider, which is very, very interesting. And so, because previously, the government can't be everywhere. And when you've got the banks manipulating these markets through high frequency trading and through all the very, very clever ways that occur on a regular basis, it's very difficult for the regulators to police that, because they just don't have the sophistication. They don't have the talent inside their departments to actually go in and actually look at all the stuff that's going on, because quite honestly, they probably don't even understand it. So now all of a sudden, they have someone that actually does in fact understand what's going on a regular basis now working for the CFTC. So the banks are getting tired, in my view, or at least they have to be getting tired of getting, multi-billion-dollar fines on a regular basis. And I'm sure the shareholders are probably not very pleased about it either. So, I think the banks are slowly getting away and from this whole manipulation of markets. At least I'm optimistic it's happening. I think it is happening. And, I'm optimistic that over time, there'll be less manipulation going on. And, we will have proper price discovery.
We can only hope. And when you and I last spoke, Keith, First Mining Finance had decided to move some of the properties that they had acquired to the next level of development. And over the weekend, I was reviewing some of the projects that you have listed. And can you give us a quick update on what's happening with some of the First Mining Finance properties? I mean, because you've got, I think there was about 10 or 12 properties listed on the website.
Yeah, I think the number is 25 actually. So, Yeah, it was higher, but we sold three silver exploration projects to a company called Silver One, which I happen to be an investor in as well. But so they're dealing with those three silver exploration properties in Mexico, and they've done some work on them, just preliminary work, and hopefully they'll be advancing those projects a little bit more. But First Mining's focus really become gold in Canada. From the time it went public in April of 2015 to really about May, June of the following year, 2016, it made 13 acquisitions over that period. No, pardon me, 18 acquisitions, or eight acquisitions, and I mean public companies. They actually bought 8 other public companies that had their own portfolios of very interesting gold projects, and it just happened to be all focused in Eastern Canada, in Ontario, Quebec, and Newfoundland. And now First Mining Finance has one of the most interesting gold portfolios there is comparatively to any junior mining company in the world, as far as I can tell. And as a result of the changes in the market, the company was successfully able to raise a substantial amount of money. It raised over $30 million last year, and it's now spending that money on drilling programs. And they've drilled the Spring Pole project, which came out with some very, very interesting intersections, big, long, beautiful intersections, and those were news released. And there's some metallurgical work that's currently going on, and the Spring Pole preliminary economic assessment will be updated hopefully sometime by the end of the year to even improve the economics based on the metallurgical work that's currently underway. And then they started drilling at Goldland, and they drilled 100 holes at Goldland. The drill program just finished a couple of weeks ago. They've just news released about 35 of those holes, a bunch of beautiful high-grade gold intercepts. They're going to come out with some more news. All the holes will be released over the next couple of months. And I'm hoping to see, all the holes very much similar to what's already been announced. And assuming they all are, then they're going to launch a phase 2 drilling program in a couple of months, and hopefully even start to extend the current known mineralization to other areas on the property. And then there's a couple other projects also in Ontario, and then the Hope Brook project in Newfoundland will be drilled later this year. So there's going to be tons of news coming out on First Mining. And the stock was $1, back in April, and it got, quite badly damaged as a result of this GDXJ. So, hopefully the news over the next, few months will get the stock back up to where it was originally before all this GDXJ mess occurred.
Yeah, and now is First Mining Finance going to keep these properties, or are they going to sell them off
No, it's a good question, Rory. We get that question all the time, and we changed the business slightly, and
okay.
I've learned in business that you have to be flexible. Right? If you run an inflexible business, often you're going to just kill yourself. And First Mining was on record saying they're never going to drill a hole. We're going to buy up these things. We're going to find JV partners and potentially sell projects off and so on and so forth. And we did sell some projects, as I said earlier, to Silver One, and some of the other projects we're in discussions with to sell off as well. But the core projects, the Canadian projects, the ones in Ontario, Quebec, and Newfoundland, are very much our core portfolio now. And we are determined to continually develop these assets and de-risk them. We think there's a lot more gold in the ground than's currently defined, and we want to prove that to ourselves, of course, and prove that to the market. And but it's going to take time to do that. It probably takes a couple of years of consistent drilling to really start to advance these projects. And then we'll see where the market is at that time, and then we'll see what we decide to do with the assets. When that time comes. But for the next year or two, for sure. Our whole focus is to de-risk them and to try to develop more ounces.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
And one more question for you, then I'll let you get back to your afternoon. And this
Sure.
is completely out of left field. And does the does the Trump administration stand a chance, in your opinion, of actually making something happen? I mean, never mind making America great again. I mean, are the power brokers ever going to release their stranglehold, or how do you foresee this whole thing unfolding?
I'm not sure if you've been watching the Putin interviews, but I finished watching the third one just yesterday, and it was quite fascinating.
Yes.
Listening to these interviews is quite shocking as well, but also, but very fascinating. And one of Putin's statements, it was, which I think was dead on. He says, we don't care who's the president of the United States because nothing ever changes anyways. So
there you go.
It's very unfortunate. I think there was a lot of optimism around Trump actually making changes, and I'm optimistic that he'll be successful in some of the campaign promises he made. Just because I'm an optimist at heart, but historically speaking, a lot of people, even in Canada, when they're on the campaign trail trying to become the leader of a country, and they win that office, and all of a sudden start to do the day-to-day job, and they find that it's not that easy to make change, and they run into all kinds of roadblocks and all kinds of politics and so on and so forth. And we're seeing Trump run into those problems, and he's probably surprised himself a little bit in the fact that it is so difficult to make change, and I'm sure he's very frustrated.
I would imagine that he is. It's frustrating to watch, I'll tell you that. And you travel a lot, Keith, and what are you hearing outside the U.S. regarding what's going on here? I mean, I know you just said you were listening to the Putin interviews. I mean, what are you hearing on the ground, or is there any talk in the various countries and that you visit on a regular basis?
Yeah, it's the people that I generally discuss stuff with, or the institutions, the big investors and so on and so forth. And I think we're probably all of like mind, where we're all hoping for a safer world, less conflict, less government intervention in people's lives and so on and so forth. And I think Trump was potentially one of those individuals that could have brought that to at least the U.S. people, and maybe had some contagion that could also start influencing other governments around the world. But maybe that's optimistic. I don't know. Time will tell. But the general person on the street, like for example in Mexico, Trump is not a very well liked individual. They're very scared of him. And I know, in the UK, throughout Europe, because I'm in Europe quite a lot, the average person on the street, I don't think, are big fans of Trump, So I think there's a huge divergence of people that, obviously have their own, very polar opinions regarding, the current administration in the United States. And, it is fascinating. There's probably more U.S. news, news surrounding the president than of any other president of the United States. It seems it's phenomenal. Actually, you see Trump's face on television, I think more than any other president ever that's been elected. So
he's on TV a lot, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And Keith, I won't take up any more of your time, and I certainly appreciate all you've given us. And we've been speaking with Mr. Keith Neumeyer, and he is the president and CEO of First Majestic, and he is the chairman of First Mining Finance. You'll find First Majestic listed on the New York Stock Exchange under the symbol AG, and on the Toronto Exchange under the symbol FR. On the Frankfurt Exchange under the symbol FMV, like victory. And First Mining Finance you'll find on the Toronto's Venture Exchange under the symbol FF, and on the OTC market under the symbol FFGMF.
That was pretty impressive, Rory, that you actually had all those symbols. Thanks for putting those symbols out. And also, of course, the websites, First Majestic Silver is just First Majestic at firstmajestic.com. And of course, First Mining Finance is firstminingfinance.com. And then, of course, as you said, my Twitter account, just Keith_Neumeyer, Neumeyer. I don't do a lot of tweets, but the stuff I do hopefully is of interest to people. I try to be as, I don't want to pollute people's inboxes with a bunch of nonsense, but the stuff I do send out hopefully is worthwhile.
I'm not going to take up any more of your time, Keith. I certainly appreciate all you've given me, and I look forward to speaking with you in the not too distant future.
Okay, well, great. Good chatting again.
All right, talk to you soon.
Okay, talk to you later. Thank you.
Bye-bye.